Hi, I'm Melanie Sinclair, along with John Stein and Tim Clay.
Woo!
And we are Tennessee Fully Exposed. We have a guest today. We have a public defender from the 23rd Judicial area, and his name is Jake Lockert. Jake, are you with us?
I am.
Well, we hear you've been having some problems over there in the 23rd Judicial area, especially with Sheriff Chris Davis. This guy has done a lot of kind of shady things. Everything from having, and I'm going to go ahead and say allegedly, because I'm not quite sure exactly where we are. I'm going to let you tell us what has been found on this guy. That I do know that police department has had 2 different beatings of citizens on their record. Anyway, accusations, stolen property, 10 years affairs and having women, public sex, that sort of stuff going on
in the courthouse.
Right. Throwing that up in the air to you, Jake. I know that he's now come after you, so I'm going to let you set us up with what's going on with this guy.
Okay. What happened is January of last year, we had a client who was beaten by members of the Humphreys County Sheriff's Department, and according to numerous witnesses, by the sheriff himself inside the jail. It started out at a residence in the rural county of Humphreys County, and there'd been a call from a neighbor who heard either gunshots or fireworks. As it later turned out, it was fireworks. When the deputy arrived, my client and 2 other gentlemen were standing out in the yard talking, and the officer first ascertained that there was no gunplay involved, and asked them to keep their hands out of their pocket. Rather than tell my client to put his hands up against the wall and pat him down, he kept for an extended period of time holding his hands up in the air and never patted him down. And my client arms got tired, and he started to lower his arms. When that happened, this deputy grabbed him, and then another deputy grabbed him. They took him to the ground, and then during the course of over 20 minutes, they cuffed him, beat him, tased him, kicked his ribs to the point that they broke his ribs and drove his ribs through his lung, puncturing his lung, injured a vertebrae in his lower back, and injured a bone in his shoulder.
How many officers are we looking at here against one? 4?
There were 3 or 4 county deputies and 1 or 2 city officers at that scene.
And I saw that video, and I thought it was very strange how that deputy kept on saying, turn on your stomach, roll over on your stomach. That's what he kept on saying. He said it over and over again. I thought
while tasing the victim.
While tasing the victim. Yeah, right. Okay, as soon as the electrical charge leaves your body, will you please roll over? I mean,
right.
Oops, not fast enough, zap.
You also had contradictory commands. When you first hear them tell him, we're going to cause hundreds of thousands of volts to go through your body, don't move, and then right after they told him, if you move, you're going to be electrocuted, one of the other officers told him, put your hands out in front and roll over. Well, when he started to roll over, they tased him because the other officer had told him not to move. So he was in a no-win situation.
Hey.
You're told not to move, and if you move, we're going to electrocute you. And then the other officer tells him to roll over.
Or he'll electrocute him.
They would tase him and then tell him to roll over, and you could hear him say, I can't, because you can't move immediately after being tased. And then Officer Tim Hedge started administering what they refer to in their report as knee strikes, leg strikes or kicks
Yeah.
To the ribs, and you can hear it. I mean, it sounds almost like kicking a watermelon. It's just a sickening sound.
They hit him with bats too. It looked like they had their little stick out at one point and hitting him. And I did also notice that there was missing footage out of what we saw on.
They hit him.
Go ahead.
They hit him with a steel asp, which is one of those asps that's extendable.
Mm-hmm. I have one of those. Really.
I think they broke an asp. According to Mr. Ring, they also were striking him with a mag light, and they had also pulled his pants off so that he was naked. And this is January, and it was extremely, extremely cold. And this went on for 20-something minutes. And we later found out through reading reports that the sheriff was there at the scene also. He did not participate in that beating or kicking, but
and that's where you come in. Isn't that where he starts having issues with you because he's saying he wasn't there? And
yeah, the lawsuit is alleged defamation of character, where I made statements that he was present at the scene and that the video showed he did not take any action to put a stop to what was going on. And in the officer's reports, they place him arriving at the scene prior to the taser being administered and the leg strikes to the ribs being administered. And then, of course, on the video and the audio, Sheriff Davis does not intervene or take any action to put a stop to this. What actually happened is the city officer who had been called out, he thought it was a shots fired call. And so he was not sure if this person had a weapon or not, but you could see that shortly after he realized what was going on, he told them, pull the tasers, and they basically did what they should have done to start with that many officers, which was just pick him up and put him in a patrol car. The Sheriff Davis took him in a patrol car, and they said he refused medical treatment, but they took him to the hospital naked. And Mr. Ring, of course, did not want to go in the hospital naked, and so he refused medical treatment. Then, according to at least 4 witnesses, he was brought into the jail naked. A female jailer brought a blanket to him so he could be wrapped in a blanket, taken to his cell, where Sheriff Davis, while he was shackled and cuffed, administered knee strikes to him as he lay on a concrete cot in a single holding cell.
Now, who are the witnesses in that? I had saw that there was one inmate, and this particular inmate ended up having to be switched out of this jail and sent to another jail for his own safety, obviously.
You had jailers who gave statements about him coming in naked and taking a blanket to him. You have jailers who have in depositions have admitted that he was tased again in the jail cell while shackled and cuffed and laying down. And then you have 4 inmates who were directly across the hall and observed what was going on. They gave statements to the TBI and the FBI.
Whose testimony?
You had a combination of jail personnel and inmates.
Whose testimony was it that they claimed that one of the female department employees told the sheriff that she had never seen a man tased and was then thereby given a demonstration on your client?
The inmates testified that they heard a female jailer say she had not seen someone tased before, that the officers went back, opened the door, tased him again. Another female jailer actually went back to the jail cell and recovered the taser prongs from Mr. Ring, from Darren Ring.
And has that story had any corroboration?
Well, you had, of course, a female jailer who went back and got the tongs. That's pretty good corroboration.
I'd say that's corroborating evidence, yes.
And then you have a jailer who's given a deposition that he was tased in the jail cell while cuffed and shackled and laying down. So that's good corroboration. And then you had at least 4 inmates who observed that take place also. One was so concerned that he called his father and asked his father to get a lawyer down there. And that inmate's father has also verified that he did get a call from his son who was rather hysterical about that. So that was the beginning of this whole investigation into violation of civil rights, constitutional rights, and also corruption. The video itself really speaks for itself. I mean, it's clear that the officers used excessive force and went way too far. The problem is, in that district, the district attorney, Dan Alsbrooks, made a statement that there's a lot more to it than the video. And
I noticed that there were several minutes that were missing footage. I mean, who took that out? It
may have been edited by, I don't know if it's the department or whatever. I do know that I had a copy of the full raw video and watched the raw video, and what you see as far as the steel asp strikes, what apparently is the mag light strikes, the leg kicks, and the taser are all in that video. A couple of larger departments, one in Chattanooga and one in Gallatin, reviewed the video, and they're in a position to testify that it was clearly excessive force and just not good police work from any standpoint, because you'll see that they're allowing a man with a big stick, looks like a walking tall stick, walking around the officers there and walking around the scene while this is taking place. From that point forward, we initiated an investigation because it was clear no one else was going to. I first contacted the sheriff and asked him to do an investigation and take disciplinary action, and he refused. I contacted the county attorney and asked him to take disciplinary action and to recommend an investigation. He refused. I then contacted the district attorney and found out that he was already aware of the video and he had not requested an investigation. And so at that point, I advised all of them that I was going to go to the media with this, because if they weren't going to take any action to put a stop to this, I couldn't stand by and let this continue and then have someone else injured even worse down the road. And so I released it to the media and began my own investigation.
What would have happened if we didn't have video, though? I mean, if you think about the exact same situation, it makes you wonder how many times, and I knew this, because I've seen it firsthand, where, if it's simply the officer's word against inmate's word and there's no video, the jury is always going to take the word of the officer. So what would have happened if there had not been video in this case?
Probably nothing, although the severity of his injuries would certainly have indicated that excessive force was used. I mean, when you have a fractured lower vertebrae, a broken bone in your shoulder, broken ribs, and a punctured lung, that would certainly indicate that a lot of was used. But yeah, you're right. But for the video, these things will be often ignored or swept under the rug. And I've seen that happen all the time. We've had, during that same time period from January last year, I probably had 20 or more similar complaints of other officers being involved in this type of conduct. And I've received complaints from fellow law enforcement officers regarding to some of these officers beating people down also. So
now these kind of comments,
the video is is imperative, and that's the reason I wish they all were required to wear mic cams.
Jake, these comments you're making now and comments you made during your investigation, is that got something to do with why Sheriff Davis has filed a lawsuit against you personally?
Yes, that's exactly why. He says that he was not there during the time Darren Ring was beaten, and he's denied taking part in any type of beating.
So that is his specific allegation against you, that you're alleging that that you have said he was present for these issues or episodes, and he maintains that he was not there, and therefore you're defaming him.
Right.
I understand.
In order for there to be defamation of a public figure, he has to show that I knew that was not true and that I maliciously lied about him. But prior to making those statements, I had an investigator with the district attorney's office advise me that he was present out at the scene where Dan Ring was beaten. The sheriff told me himself that he was out there and that it was dark and that the video is two-dimensional, whatever that means, and that there was a lot going on that you couldn't see. And even the district attorney made that comment.
Now, was one of the things
more to it than what's on the video?
Was one of the things you couldn't see the sheriff happened to be in the background behind the camera?
The sheriff was behind the camera. That is correct. That is correct. He was not on camera. He was there. The reports confirm he was there. The fact that he left the scene and transported the defendant tells you that he was there. I mean, if he's not there, he can't leave that scene of the arrest and transport the defendant to the hospital.
Do any of the reports of the incident mention that he was present?
Yes.
Oh, good. Okay.
Yeah, one of the deputies' reports indicates that chronologically that the sheriff arrived, that the next paragraph he mentions that the tasers were administered and the leg kicks. So according to that report, he at least was there during the time the taser was administered and the leg strikes that you see to Darren Ring, that sounds like somebody's kicking a watermelon or something.
His own lawyer, John Griffith, begged him to drop the lawsuit. I mean, this guy is like a longtime friend.
Well, now Griffith is your lawyer, isn't he, Jake?
Yeah, my lawyer. My lawyer, John Griffith, grew up with the sheriff.
So he's not lawyer for Chris Davis. I thought he was the attorney for him.
No,
he just works for
John Griffith is my lawyer. Philip Davidson is Sheriff Davis's lawyer.
Gotcha.
And we frankly were just a little surprised that he would even file this lawsuit, because when you file a lawsuit and say that your public character has been defamed, you put your public character at issue, which allows us to take depositions in regard to anything that affects your public character, such as having affairs with women while in county equipment on county time, in the courthouse, in the sheriff's office, those type things.
Yeah, this last deposition didn't seem to go real well for Sheriff Davis.
Yeah, that was pretty painful to watch, actually.
No, it didn't go well at all. Former Sheriff Ronnie Tungette, who is now a court officer, testified, and Sheriff Tungette has an outstanding reputation there and served, I think, about 28 years as sheriff, and did an excellent job. But he is the one who found the stolen property.
The four-wheelers?
Which included brand new riding lawnmowers, John Deere riding lawnmowers with serial numbers missing. At least one trailer with the serial number missing. And of course, Sheriff, I still refer to him as Sheriff Tungette because he was sheriff so long. Ronnie Tungette was calling to have this stuff taken in, and Sheriff Chris Davis stopped him and told him that he would get the property owner to bring it in. Well, I mean, that is absurd for you to ask the person who has the stolen property, will you bring this stuff in next week so that we can prosecute you? I mean, that's just
That would be nice.
Absurd.
That would be nice if they would do it that way.
Come on down and check into the hotel while you're here.
But if it were you or me, that's not how it would have happened.
Right. That person was a close friend of the sheriff, been his campaign treasurer just a year before in his campaign. So, I mean, it's clear what was being done. And, in fact, they were able to get rid of all the stolen property, which means, you know, people that had brand new John Deere lawnmowers stolen were not able to get their property back.
Was the property owner ever prosecuted? Because from what I read, they did recover one stolen trailer. Was anybody ever prosecuted in that case?
They recovered a stolen trailer a year or more later in a drug raid that was not even related to the stolen property, and found the stolen property. The man who owned the property where all the stolen items were, his son ended up being prosecuted and is serving a federal sentence now.
But the actual property owner was never charged with possession of stolen property or obstruction of justice for not turning in the stolen property, or nothing was ever done to the campaign treasurer.
I think a year later, a different unit, not the sheriff, but a different unit, came in, recovered the trailer, and charged him with essentially receiving and concealing stolen property.
Now, let me ask you something with this last beating case. My understanding is that 2 deputies were fired, but they were under administrative pay leave, basically. And
2 deputies were suspended with pay, Deputy Tim Hedge and Deputy Benji Lee. They were on suspension with pay for a matter of months. They were eventually terminated, and they were indicted federally.
Good. And what about Davis? I mean, is there anything? I mean, has he even had his wrist slapped? I mean, is he being suspended? I mean, this is.
He has not been charged criminally. The district attorney has made it pretty clear that he's just not going to seek criminal charges against the sheriff.
And which district attorney is this?
It's Dan Alsabrooks.
Okay.
Alsabrooks works with the 23rd Judicial Drug Task Force, and Davis is a member of the board of directors.
Well, that explains
the task force. And so you've got a connection there, as well as they've been friends for some period of time. Now, it remains to be seen. I would think that Alsabrooks will have to bring charges based on these depositions that have just been taken, because it's clear now that Sheriff Chris Davis clearly obstructed justice when he allowed the property owner to have the opportunity to get rid of the stolen property. And it's also clear in his deposition that he admitted to using confiscated four-wheelers for his own personal use and allowing his family to use them for his own personal use.
And a lot of this stuff is evidence. I mean, that are supposed to be, evidence for people's trials. I mean, my understanding is that there are other incidences where they, not, like the four-wheelers, but I mean, there are other things that they have confiscated that they've just been passing them around. Jewelry, and, they've been doing a lot of shady things with this stuff.
I don't know about allegations of jewelry. I know in the deposition he admitted to giving a boat motor to a gentleman, and said that it was with the agreement he would only use that boat motor in the event they needed him to help search for bodies in the Tennessee River.
Oh, well, that was really nice.
He also stated that in a matter of years he's never called on that person to help search for bodies. And it's possible, theoretically, that man has never used that boat and the boat motor for anything else, but it'd be pretty unlikely, I would say.
Are you familiar with Glenn Capps?
Yes. We represent Glenn Capps, and immediately after the Humphreys County deputies followed him to Hickman County and roughed him up.
Out of jurisdiction.
And searched. Yes, Hickman County is not in the jurisdiction of the Humphreys County officers. Glenn Capps worked for Barnett's Wrecker Service, and they have a business at the Waverly exit, and they also have one at the Hickman County exit. The Hickman County exit is very isolated. There aren't businesses that are open at night, that type thing. He worked at night, so he would drive from Hickman County to the Waverly exit and go to a Pilot store there to buy cigarettes. And he had gone and bought a pack or two of cigarettes and was on his way back. Humphreys County deputies thought that was unusual or suspicious because they'd seen that car there before during those hours of the morning, even though you have open businesses.
Wow.
So they followed him back to Hickman County, drug him out of the place of business, arrested him for resisting arrest, even though they weren't even in Humphreys County, and then proceeded to search Greg Barnett's place of business without a search warrant.
Oh, wow.
What they didn't realize that Greg Barnett had installed a high-definition video surveillance system.
Good for him.
And so we subpoenaed the videos and the patrol car videos, and the District Attorney Dan Alsbrooks promptly filed a motion to have all those matters put under seal so that I couldn't see them and so that the public couldn't see them. And Judge Larry Wallace, I think very much mistakenly, placed those matters, those items under seal. So the public is yet to see what the officers did to Glenn Capps and the fact that they searched this man's place of business without jurisdiction or without a search warrant. So it's been a difficult task on my part to expose the corruption and the civil rights violations and the brutality because the sheriff has a buddy who's a district attorney who is constantly filing motions to keep the evidence from the public and hide it from the attorneys, and so that makes it a little more difficult when you have a district attorney who is not taking hold of this and trying to prosecute bad law enforcement.
Does the DA's office share in any of the funds that the Drug Task Force
interdiction
receives through interdiction?
I don't know if they share in funds. I know they have a drug case prosecutor. My assumption is that that's funded out of that. Mm-hmm. I know that they have a director of the Drug Task Force who is funded out of that. He is also a criminal investigator with the district attorney's office, which is something I've always thought a little bit unusual. He has a full-time job with the state as a criminal investigator. And so I've often wondered, how can he be a full-time director of the Drug Task Force and draw two salaries?
Busy man.
That seems a little bit improper. But much of what you've seen in news coverage about the task force would clearly show you that they have some problems, but they're very secretive.
Well, you know, Dan Alsbrooks, and of course I'm saying this at my own peril as far as my probation program. But anyway, Dan Alsbrooks, you know, he's also the one who refused to investigate the allegations of people being pulled over without probable cause and search. When Channel 5 News did their report and had the helicopter flying overhead, you know, the sheriff, or excuse me, the police chief of Dixon supposedly turned it into Dan Alsbrooks to investigate, and nothing was ever done.
And my understanding was that best of my recollection is Alsbrooks had made a statement in the media that there would be an investigation. And you're correct, that has not been done. And what that showed, that's just another instance where you just had a video to back up what we hear all the time from people, that officers say they've pulled them over for crossing the fog line or crossing the double yellow line, or having some problem with their driving to give them probable cause for an interdiction stop. But what you'll see is the officers will not turn their video on until they are initiating a stop.
Amazingly,
And,
the evidence
it
never
would be
shows up
so
on tape.
much better, and so much. It would just be more fair for them to flip video on as soon as they see what they maintain is probable cause for stop. If you see someone crossing the fog line, flip your video on, follow them for a few minutes, and get that on tape so that we're not having to take the officer's word, because it's clear after that Channel 5 investigation, the defendant that was pulled over was not driving improperly at all. The only one in that video that was crossing fog line and yellow line was the officer himself, who was trying to get up beside him and get a look at him. So that is just fraught with opportunities for corruption and dishonesty. The same with the dogs they use. They can say they're hits with their dogs on vehicles. The officers can say that someone crossed the fog line, and so they pull them over. And all they're doing, in big part, is working what we refer to as the cash side of the interstate. Very seldom are they working the drug side to try to get the drugs off the street. What they're interested in doing is getting the people that are coming back from the Northeast with cash.
See, that's so amazing to me, because when I was a probation officer out there and worked with you, the Dixon had one of the highest drug seizure rates actually in the country back then. I mean, they were just seizing drugs left and right. With using the fault line as the most common reason why people were being pulled over. Conducting illegal searches. Conveniently the audio whenever they say, "Can we search your car?" and
right.
It would conveniently cut out, and then later they testify that the person consented, even though they would sit there in court and scream that they didn't.
Right.
It just and I guess obviously they came to wisdom, and they realized that I guess they can get more. Seizing drugs doesn't do any good unless you can sell the drugs, which of course that was another case a few years ago, which we won't go into. All the drugs that were missing. Did that ever come out, by the way? I know that was a big thing. The drugs kept turning up missing over and over again over the years. Did they ever investigate that and find the source of where the somebody would get pulled over and be charged with 10 kilos and turn around and tell their attorney, "Hey, I had 20 kilos."
There have been numerous instances of drugs missing that they never have found out anything. I don't know whether they truly investigated that much or not. I represented a defendant who was stopped in an interdiction stop and had 46 kilos of cocaine, and I think 28 ended up missing. They did find out what had happened in that. TBI had contracted with private security agency to guard the warehouse that had the drugs, and they actually found that one of the guards was taking the kilos and selling them for $1,000 a kilo, which that's a huge bargain.
Wow.
To pay $1,000 for a kilo of cocaine. But that's about the only one I can recall that they got to the bottom of, and I suspect that's because it involved drugs being kept at the TBI, so the TBI got to the bottom of it.
But, I can remember many times.
You have numerous instances of drugs missing from task force that are not investigated, and they're not going to self-police themselves. And you have a district attorney who doesn't want the embarrassment to the task force. It has become a money-making agency. I think they have 16 employees, and the last audit I read, they had, I believe it was $3 million, and they had, I think, $2 million in reserve.
Wait, can you say those numbers one more time?
Operation.
What would you say? Did you say 50 million? What was how much money was that?
That they have in reserve?
Right.
I believe it's $3.4 million. No, not $50 million.
I thought you said, I don't know. My brain just did backflip.
That's still pretty good for 16 employees.
Well, yeah, they just built a...
I know. That is really good. Wow. That is pretty good.
They've just built a real nice new drug task force facility. And they're spending money, and I think they're afraid the legislature may raid those reserves at some point to put those in the general fund for the state. And I think probably out of fear of that happening, they're going to try to spend, some when they can. But it's no doubt it's a cash making business. There's not a war on drugs. I represent a huge percentage of the people that are charged on drug charges, and what we see more than anything are poor people that are on 10 care. They'll get some CI that's a cousin or friend to go buy a lower tab or something from them. They'll bust those people for selling a lower tab. They lose their 10 care and end up with a $2,000 fine, which they can never pay, and it's ridiculous. It's not a war on drugs. They're out to make money, and they're doing a good job. When you've got $2 million in reserves, you're doing a good job of getting the cash.
Can I ask you something? I'm curious about the DA Kim Helper. I saw some of her interviews with Channel 5, and did I misread? I just wanted to make sure, because I kind of felt like that she is wanting to make this legal for this jurisdiction of police to continue to do this. Did I misunderstand that, or are you familiar with her?
I am familiar with her. I'm not familiar with any statements that she's made. Now, what they do is they have task force in various jurisdictions enter into agreements with one another where they will split a portion of the confiscated money, which allows someone in Dixon to follow someone into another jurisdiction and make an interdiction stop.
That just completely sounds illegal. I mean, it just does.
What they do technically they do it correctly. They'll have agents deputized in various counties so that they can work. That a Dixon County deputy who works with interdiction can go into another county because they also carry a commission in that county. And technically, I think that's probably appropriate, and I don't think that it's illegal. It just bothers me that the goal is to get cash, and that the drug cases they're making are by and large poor people who can't afford a lawyer, who live in a trailer and end up losing their 10 care. I'm not saying that what those people do is right, but if you want to make a dent in the drug trade, or if you really want to carry out a war on drugs, that's not where you need to be doing it.
Why don't they give all the money seized to the drug court? What do you think? Great idea, right?
I wish they would. They have donated in the past, usually $10,000 a year. I think one year they gave $20,000. This year they're not giving any, and that's
surprise.
As long as Chris Davis is on the board of directors, I don't anticipate that drug court is going to receive anything.
Let me explain why I said that.
Because 82% of our graduates in drug court stay out of the criminal justice system. There's no other program that's more effective in turning people's lives around.
So you don't get any repeat business out of them, so why fund it?
Well, if their goal was to cut down on crime, they would want to be donating considerably to our drug court program because we're so successful.
Well, you can't police for profit, I think is what you're saying. You can't police for profit if you have no business. So if you don't have any repeat offenders, I mean, if they're all cleaning up their act and not...
The policing for profit is on the interstate.
Yeah,
they could donate to our drug court, which deals with local offenders in the criminal justice system, which includes burglaries, forgeries, property crimes. All the crimes that we deal with are a huge percentage, I'd say over 80%, or at least drug-related, in that often it's addicts that are stealing mama's check and forging it,
Right.
or breaking in a house and taking property and pawning it to get drug money, or that are going to Walmart or Walgreens to buy Sudafed so they can take it to somebody cooking and swap it for half a gram of methamphetamine. Those people can be helped through the drug court program. It would not affect their cash profit that they're getting from interdiction stops. The interdiction, those are not local people. Those are people that are usually from Arizona, Texas, somewhere like that, mules that are running drugs up east or up north and then coming back with the cash. And so that would not hurt their policing for profit at all to help the drug court program.
Well, and what I find interesting is, of course, obviously we're going to hear about the most extreme cases. Actually, but I really think we don't hear about most cases, because we hear about the insurance professional who gets pulled over and gets $22,000 seized in Monterey County that he was going to use to buy a car, or you hear about those kinds of cases. But since the hearings, the initial hearing doesn't allow for the defense to say anything, it's a one-sided hearing. You have to appeal in every case. You have to file an appeal to get your money back. So if you're from out of the state and you have $500 or $1,000, and they say, hey, do you have any cash over $500? And you say, oh yeah, I'm going on vacation, I have $2,000 in cash. They take it. It's not worth it for you to come back and fight it. I mean, you have to come back for the initial hearing and appeal.
It becomes logistically and economically impractical to do that. I mean, you can't hire an attorney. You can't come back to do that. It's not worth it. It can take up to a year or longer sometimes to get any results. And so oftentimes those people just let it go. And those that are truly mules that are just running the drugs and the cash, they'll just forfeit the cash. I mean, they'll just say, I don't know where that duffel bag that has $280,000 in it came from. It's not mine. And yeah, I'll sign it over to you. That's just the cost of business for them. But yeah, those people that are being trampled without due process, oftentimes it's going to be an amount that is not worth it for them to try to fight it. And so, yeah, they can get $500,000, $2,000 at a pop, and nobody's going to say anything.
What's the best way to, in your opinion, to get rid of that problem, the problem with the illegal interdiction and policing for profit, they say? How would you get rid of that problem?
I think the best way is to remove the incentive.
Mm-hmm.
Don't allow the task force to keep all the monies. Take enough to run your program and pay your salaries, and then take the rest and put it into the general fund for the legislature or the counties in the district, and have that money used for education and other purposes.
How about get it completely out of the system?
If they're not going to be making a lot of money doing this, then you're going to remove some of the incentive, and they'll probably have to downsize their departments. But you don't need a drug task force with 16 employees to work the 23rd.
And that's what worries me about putting it into any arm of the government, is you're going to create corruption anytime you start throwing money in a direction. Why not put it in the hands of, say, non-governmental, non-profit agencies who can do some good with it? Send it completely out of the government's hands and distribute it places that might actually do some good.
Well, the alliance that works with Tennessee drug court professionals are going to be seeking legislation to have a percentage of those confiscations go into the drug court programs. I know Judge Seth Norman is interested in doing that, and I know other programs are also. And you would only take those that have certified programs
Would that be specifically drug revenues or drug funds, or would that go for any confiscated property?
That would only go toward the drug task force confiscations. That could be cars, money,
Gotcha.
all of those things.
I would like to see probable cause more defined. I think that's highly abused. I think and then we also have the problem of a lot of this stuff, the cameras just so happen to not be on during the time. So I just, I don't know. Weaving is, I don't know. You say tomato, I say tomato. I just think that, weaving to me would be going from one solid white line back to the other side and back to one lane. Just to go over the little line in the middle of the road, I just don't really think that should be considered weaving. So I just think that the probable cause needs to be more defined, and I think that their probable cause needs to be proven.
Absolutely. The video should be required. Mic cams should be required. You've heard complaints in the past that it's logistically difficult or possible to do that, but in the age of digital media, they could record 24/7 in those vehicles, and put the recordings in a shoebox. I mean, there are no videotapes that have to be stored now. We don't have any of those issues with digital recording. There's no reason not to flip the recorder on beforehand. There's no reason for the officer not to have a mic cam. It serves two purposes. It protects the people that are out there that are being pulled over on these interdiction stops, but it also protects the officers. Because often you'll go back and look at a video, and you'll see, for instance, that the officer has done this so often he's not paying attention, and I've watched them do it. They'll turn the hip that has their gun on it toward the people they have pulled over and be looking in another direction so that person could pull that gun out pretty quickly. So it's good for officer safety. It's good to ensure due process. It's good to ensure that there is probable cause. But you just see resistance toward that. I mean, we see it even with the TBI. The TBI has a policy of not recording statements and confessions, and it's just ridiculous. They'll write out a summary of what they say the person said, and that often is going to be a very slanted summary against the person they're taking a statement from.
And that's who's investigating these things, like Chris Davis, right? I mean, in the TBI.
Yeah.
I mean, so it's very shady.
I've had cases where the TBI has taken one of those statements, not realizing that a deputy who's sitting there had a recorder on in his pocket. And so I was able to take a transcript of what was actually said and compare it to the statement, and it was two different things completely.
Wow.
And as long as you have that, it's going to be easier for bad officers to make up lies, like that interdiction officer that didn't know the helicopter was above him, to make up the lies about the vehicle swerving all over the road. And like you said earlier, if we don't have something, generally people are going to believe the law enforcement officer.
Mm-hmm.
So innocent people are going to be deprived of their constitutional rights and due process and their property without due process, and they're going to be on the short end of the stick usually because it's going to be their word against the officer's word.
Well, what makes me mad is clearly, I mean, people just don't know what's going on, and you have been great about getting the word out. Of course, I've known you for years. You've always, we don't agree on everything politically, but that is okay. I respect you tremendously. You've always been incredibly honest and genuine anytime, whether we're talking or you're posting on Facebook. You're a very genuine, honest person, and I wish we had more integrity in our law enforcement. And instead of teaching in these law enforcement academies, that the police officer always has to be right and win. It'd be nice if they really focused on integrity and honesty and doing the right thing no matter what. we're supposed to look up to our police officers, and 50 years ago, I think the community did, even though there was, I'm sure, corruption then. But
Right.
people looked up to the police officer and authority figures rather than treating them or having these feelings of contempt and distrust. And over again, we're seeing videos, surface across the country. Antonio Bueller in Austin was just arrested again this past weekend for videotaping officers. It's the second time arrested for videotaping an officer, not
Right.
doing anything else, but he was charged with interference because he was videotaping.
Yeah.
And I really appreciate your trying to get the word out, and hopefully we can all do our part and do that.
Yes, and thank you for coming on to our show. We're really trying to turn this police state around. It's not that we don't want police, and I think we need them, but we don't need sheriffs like Chris Davis, out there, and we certainly don't need dice, this sort of, robbing Citizen Peter to pay Officer Paul kind of tactics going on. So, and good luck to you with Chris Davis. It sounds like you got your hands full with him as well as his friend, the DA.
Well, we do, but the fact that he has sued me has afforded me the opportunity to take depositions. We're going to be taking 5 or 6 more depositions that will tie all of this together and also lead up to the district attorney's office, and the fact that they clearly ignored obstruction of justice and looked the other way. And I intend to expose the corruption and the negligence and unethical conduct, whether it's just in the sheriff's department or if it goes all the way up to the district attorney. I intend to expose it because it's the right thing to do.
I'm sorry about the lawsuit. I know that's got to be a pain in the rear, but you got to admit you're going to have a lot of fun with this. I mean, this guy pretty much, he just put himself on a platter. Didn't he?
He did. The main thing it does, it gives us the opportunity
To clean up.
through the deposition and the discovery process to bring out the things I've been wanting to expose. And it's much easier when you can subpoena those people in, put them under oath, and take a deposition. So, yeah, he's made it 10 times easier on me to expose what's going on in that department and in the district attorney's office than if he'd never filed the lawsuit. So, the only cost to me is going to be the cost of the lawsuit.
Exactly. And I would hope that maybe that loser pays, but I doubt that's the way it's going to work out for you. But I do think that there would be a lot less bad lawsuits like this, like Chris Davis, if the loser did have to pay.
Yeah, and we'll be asking that they have to pay.
I hope so.
But either way, and bring about some changes in law enforcement and the district attorney's office, it'll be worth it because we need it. People don't need to have to be treated the way they're being treated. And I'm just a strong believer in the Constitution, strong believer in our due process rights, Second Amendment rights, just across protected. Some beliefs, I think it's unconstitutional to make us wear a safety belt, but I do it.
Yeah, right.
Right there with you.
Well,
Yeah.
you would blend in well with this crew, and you're welcome back on this show anytime.
Yeah, Jake, we really appreciate you coming on with us, and I'd love to get you back on, talk about legalizing marijuana as well as some other topics, and I'd love to maybe make you a regular part of the show, maybe once a month, getting you on here and discussing what's going on.
I would enjoy it.
All right. Well, Jake, I appreciate it, and
Y'all have a
we will
great
talk to
day.
you soon. Thank you very
Thanks,
much.
Jake,
Jake.
thank you.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye. Yeah, that was just that was very informative.
Very.
Does that just not make you scared to get on the interstate? It's like the next time I'm going to be on it, I'm going to be like, okay, don't cross the white light. Don't cross the white light.
Yeah, a little bit of paranoia going down the road.
Yeah,
and they do have standards for the weaving. I think you have to
No, they don't.
weave over. No, they do.
Yeah,
they don't
actually
follow
do.
it, but they do. They don't necessarily follow it, But they do. It's I can't remember exactly. I want to say you have to cross the line 3 times over the course of 2 miles. I think I could be wrong.
That
but it's
may
something along
actually
those
be
lines.
a little tighter than what it is. It's been explained to me, but I don't remember it.
But it's
My point is that they've got him on video.
Oh, yeah.
Of
weaving.
of somebody not weaving. I mean, I think they should have to. I think they should have to be able to prove the probable cause in order to pull somebody over every time.
I weave more than that just drinking a cup of coffee going down the highway.
Well, I mean, that's my husband's the same way. My husband,
and I won't mention texting.
My husband's the worst weaver. I mean, and that's the way he just naturally drives. It's like, you know, I mean, how many quarters did it take you to get your driver's license out of that bubblegum machine, man?
Learn to drive on the
yeah,
car
my
at
God,
Kmart.
yeah, right, and but he didn't do it when anybody else is around. But that's just the way he drives. But I wanted to kind of end it on this. I thought this was very interesting. Director Mike Hall, which I think he's pretty much the director of the Drug Task Force here, has taken basically has taken us out of the dark ages, is what people are claiming. He's provided the DTF, which is Drug Task Force Office. He's provided the office with additional personnel, the Beast, and that's capital BEAST, which is an evidence management system, vehicles. They got new vehicles with all that money, new offices, purchased the DTF building, paved the parking lot, got us salary increases, clothing allowances, Christmas bonuses, time off when we need it.
This sounds like an awesome place to work.
Gosh, I'm telling you, it almost sounds like the Villages down in Florida. New sidearm pistols, new long rifles, level 4 tactical entry team heavy-duty vests.
Yeah, you need that a lot for traffic stops on the interstate.
Tactical green uniforms, which I didn't really realize, and I thought that was military with the green. But anyway, and all of the other equipment items to ensure that we have the best equipment needed. And they